Hi, welcome to another Coffee Talk session. Today, I'm going to be talking about S2K's service billing module and how you can use that to better service your customers and maximize revenue. So with that, let's dive in. So right from the master menu of S2K, we can access the service billing module. I'm going to go ahead and start with this customer equipment file. So in an S2K service billing module, there is this customer equipment file, which will allow you to store any items that you service for the customer. Storing of that item will include the item number, obviously a serial number, and a service tag number. So that data is there, and it's built based on history. So as you've done a service call, the information gets passed over. If this was an asset you sold to the customer, you can also create manual entries here that would include tracking of the customer warranty information. What I'm going to do for today's presentation is put this item on a preventive maintenance contract. So I'll walk through that with you here. So we'll go ahead to the next menu option here, which is our service contract file. Now, this is all fully integrated with the rest of S2K, so I went ahead and did a search. I've selected this customer, Acme Inc. This customer is set up to require a purchase order number. I've indicated here the contact and some dates. So what's the beginning date for this contract? What's the end date for the contract? Okay, what's the amount of the contract? So what's the fee? How do we bill this, etc. So this is where we're going to set up the information for the contract along with the default technician. Now it's from here too that I can assign the items. So I'm going to assign that same item 206-100-425, serial number 5656, directly to this contract. So from a preventive maintenance perspective, this is a great way of generating additional revenue with your customers. So you can work on preventive maintenance contracts with them. I'll show you how you can do individual service calls here in a few minutes, but this is a nice way of maximizing your revenue and getting customers' products maintained within the application. So if I go into some more details here, this is where we can define what the charges are. So from an hourly perspective for your labor, we can enter in here, in my example, $200 an hour. Now, there's some options here too to define parts and labor as being billable or not on a PM contract. I'll show you in just a minute where you can add in your parts and labor information. But an important point here, and again, another way to possibly increase revenue, is the price that you charge for the part could be different in the service side than it is if you were to sell that same part to the customer. So when you're pricing parts and labor, you can do that at a default system price. Think of that as one of the price levels. Or if you had some customer contract pricing set up, that's your other option. So we'll go ahead and move forward from here. And now that I have my contract set up, and we said we're going to start April 1, and then every 30 days we're going to do a service, the system will go ahead and schedule these preventive maintenance jobs. Now, they get created here, so we know the dates when those jobs are going to be done, but they have to be added into the system, which I'll show you in just a minute here how to do. So it's back here from this customer equipment selection. So here is our contract number. This was the item I showed you before. And again, if you want to add contracted parts or labor charges that are going to be included in the PM contract, you can certainly do that right from here. So again, that's a nice way of including parts and labor on the contract, but again, a great way of increasing revenue for your business. So from here, once we have that set up, we have our contracts, our preventive maintenance jobs loaded, we can go ahead here and load these jobs. So what this means is we're actually now going to create the service calls that are due as of this scheduled date. Now you can obviously go out further. I just wanted to do a more narrow range of dates here. So I'll go ahead here and indicate the date and from and to location. So in my demo, there's just one location. If you had multiple service technicians, perhaps each had their own service van, you can then schedule which service technicians would have preventive maintenance jobs loaded out into the future. Now I'm going to run this, and then what you'll see in the service call selection screen here is the system created service call 220. It's scheduled on 5/31, and again brought forward that 867-5309 purchase order number we saw before, and it included this as a preventive maintenance contract. Now, I want to show you that you can drill in. So you can drill into the contract and you can see specifically what was on the contract here. So here's our PO number again, the customer's terms, etc. From here, though, we can now schedule the call. So it was entered. I can change the status to be scheduled, and I can go ahead here at the bottom, and I can change the scheduled date if I want to, and I can define an estimated arrival time and a duration. So what you'll see here is I changed the date to 6/1, estimated arrival time of 9 o'clock. So go ahead and key that information in, and I can drill into the item if I want to see exactly what's being done, validate the item in serial number information. I'll be able to see that right here. So this was starting at that header level and drilling into the service call for a preventive maintenance type of contract. I'll show you in just a minute how you can create a one-off service call as well. So here I'll go back and just to show you now, here's our service call 220, and it's been moved to scheduled date of 6/1. So now we can go ahead, now that we've got our preventive maintenance contract service call in, I also want to walk through how you create a new service call right within the application. So right from this same service call selection screen, we'll hit the new service call. Right. As I mentioned before, this is fully integrated with the rest of S2K. So we'll do a customer search. I'm going to select my customer Acme Inc. here. And again, as you saw earlier, this customer requires a PO number. If I forget, much like customer order entry, the system's going to prompt me and say, nope, you have to put in a purchase order number for this customer. So what you'll find is the entry process of a service call is really similar to a customer order in that you've got a header screen here, and then we're going to go into some details. So I'll key in a PO number, and when I do that, now the system brings me to the detail screen where I can enter in which item is it that I want to perform a service call against. Now, it's from here that I can search the customer equipment. So if it is an asset that maybe we had previously serviced for the customer, or if it's an asset we had sold to the customer and going to service it for the first time, I can go find that. But one of the other great features of the application, which I'll show you here, is your ability now to just key in an item. So if this item doesn't exist in the item master file, but the customer's calling you saying, hey, I really want you to come out and service my item, you can do that. So I create an item here, PMZ123. So it's just an item number that I created on the fly here for the service call. The service call number obviously at the top here, 222. So I'm going to go ahead here now and just say this is a printer. I really like this feature. Where in the building is it? So what's the location of this product? So I simply put back office here. And so the customer called in. This is the item that they want to have maintained. They told us it's in the back office, and they've given this description of, well, it stopped working. Maybe it was working yesterday, stopped working today. Which is, a nice way of indicating what the problem is. It'll give the technician some information on what needs to be done. Now, there's also problem codes and resolution codes that you can set up. So if there was a series of problems that are typical in the items that you are servicing, you can record those here right from the problem and service code file. So it's from here, though, that now that I have this entered in, okay, so I've got my line item here. Now I can start to record the parts and labor. So let's pretend the service technician went out and they're going to go work on the repair. Okay, and they're going to record a couple of products here. So I've gone ahead and entered in 2 products from my service van or my service area where then I'm going to go ahead and charge to this particular service call. Now, I say service van, so if your technicians are going out and performing service, great. They can have their own van here. In my example, it's location 40. If in your business, a customer is just going to bring product to you that you're going to service, you could set up a service and repair location to decrement inventory from. In either scenario, if you've gone ahead and set up your safety stock and max stock values in S2K, the system will tell you to replenish. So it can tell you to go ahead and move product from one location to another. So I'm entering here parts, and then on the next screen, we'll go ahead here and enter the labor. So this labor can be a labor item in S2K. It could be a technician's name if you wanted to. We're just, in my presentation here, I'm just going to go and create, utilize a standard part number that I created, an on-site labor, and that has a charge of $150. Now, I'm showing you all of this entry. This is obviously all going to be done inside of a browser, so it is completely mobile, But we also have a service app now. So where you may want to use something like a Android device to record parts and labor and even capture a signature, that is now an option with S2K. So in another session or contact your salesperson, we can talk to you in more detail about the service app. But so from here, I've got my labor recorded, I've got my parts recorded, so now I can look at a charge summary. So what is it I'm going to be charging this customer? Okay, and I'll see here there's a customer discount that they're eligible for that would have been set up in the customer master file. So we've got a charge here of $191.25. Okay, so now that we have all of our charges in, we're going to go ahead back into that specific item. So I should mention on a service call, you can have multiple items. They could all be completed at different times. But it's from here now that I go to this maintenance status. It started as entered, and now we're going to complete it. So I'm going to go ahead and change the status to a C to be completed. When I do that, you'll note here that this box opens up for me to enter in resolution information. So I entered in here, replaced parts, and fully tested the unit. Now again, there's problem and resolution codes you could enter in here also. That becomes useful if you want to do some analysis later on. So if you wanted to see, for the problems that a customer reported, what were the resolutions that you were able to implement? So some nice management information is available there. So here, now that we have this data entered, we've got our problem and resolution codes and data entered in. I go back to my equipment selection screen here, and what I want to do from here is process the closed items. So essentially what we're going to do now is invoice this out. Okay. So we'll go ahead here, hit process closed items. This will give me a summary. So here's that same $191.25 we saw before. You'll note that there's a little different charge here, and that's because there's tax. So when you set up these items in the item file, you'll indicate whether or not they're chargeable on a service and repair, chargeable for tax, excuse me, on the service and repair side. So you'll see the tax can be added in here. And then once we're ready, we click the invoice button. Okay? So this would then go ahead and invoice out and also records the call-in history. So here's our call 222 now. They called in today. We completed it today. Here's the customer PO number. And again, here's our invoice amount of $208.36. So this inquiry is available right from the service call menu. Now, what I also want to show you, though, is if I jump over to the detail sales inquiry, what you'll see here is the system will tag all the service orders with an order taker of SB. So in our regular invoicing program, that's how the service calls get invoiced, but they are all tagged with an order taker of SB for service billing. In addition to that, it creates an order number here, as well as, of course, an invoice number. And I can drill in. So I'm going to go ahead and drill in here just to show you. Here's our service call 222. Here was the item that was repaired. I had keyed in a serial number, 050899, and then here, problem description, resolution description, and then here are the parts and labor that were consumed as part of that. So the idea here is, as we create a service call and when the service call is completed, all the details of the parts and labor, problems and descriptions, problems and resolutions, excuse me, would be now visible right on the customer invoice. So this invoice would be sent out like any other invoice off to the customer, but there is another really important inquiry I want you to see back in the service side, and that's this. So this is the item serial number service history inquiry. What this allows us to do now is look at an item serial number combination and see all of the times that we've serviced that product. Now what's interesting about this, if you look carefully, is what I'm not entering in here is any of the customer information. So if an asset had moved from one customer to another, you'll be able to see the full service history of that, assuming your organization had done the service, obviously. But I see this as an opportunity also to help increase revenue. So if you had an asset here that you're regularly maintaining for a customer, so I can see here there were 3 service calls in just over or just about 60 days, this is an opportunity to say to the customer, hey, we're noticing that this particular asset is requiring a lot of service. We'd like to talk to you about a replacement. Or if this has gone on over a longer period of time, maybe there's months and months and months or years of history, you can see that. And from a company perspective, you can see then how much you charge, what your cost was, and from a business perspective, a relative profit and loss. So as you're servicing this product, this asset, we are making some money, which is great. But again, this can be an opportunity to go ahead and talk to your customer about possibly replacing a product if there's been lots of maintenance fees and charges over time. So with that, I thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this coffee talk.